So as I was saying, we're going to change into the program, the entertainment program. We have two fantastic panels for you. First one, media and entertainment, the industry is one of the first sectors of business to navigate digital disruption, but its transformation is far from over. At least that's what PwC's annual 218 Media and Entertainment Outlook says, and projects the industry revenues will reach almost 800 billion by 2020. 800 billion by 2020. I'm talking money here, guys. Silence, thank you very much. 800 billion by 2020. That's a lot of money for the industry. No wonder there's so much interest. During the 5-year period from 2017 to 2022, virtual reality, over-the-top video, and internet advertising will be amongst the fastest growing revenue generators for M&E companies in the US. But there's more. You wanna know more about this? You wanna know more? You wanna know more, yes? That's why you're here. Well, we're gonna give you more, and we have a fantastic panel that doesn't stop talking here. Oh my God, they're so disobedient. And for that, we have, first of all, a great moderator, of course. He's an IT and digital journalist. He's Alberto Iglesias. You're going to meet him in a minute with the rest of the panel, who are the CEO of Yerba Buena VR, Hector Prieto, the CEO of Play Giga, Javier Polo, and the founder and CEO of Oarsys, Carlos Lopez. And here they are, the four of them. Come on, guys. Alberto, there you go. Carlos, hello, Javier, and Hector. There you go, Alberto.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here so late. I know you all want to go home, but I'm sure this panel is going to be interesting for you all. And as you know, newspaper give the chance to radio. Then radio lead the change to television. Television was the previous point for having all the internet industry. And the internet has become the perfect ecosystem to develop the new ecosystem of content distribution, basically on virtual reality and live streaming. As you know, virtual reality is moving right now, according to IDC, more than $27,000 million in investments, and streaming platforms are now the leader in content distribution, such as Netflix or Spotify. Also, the gaming industry is in a really hype right now with the esports creating a huge industry around. So there are huge topics that we are talking right now in this panel. And for discussing all these topics, trends, barrier, all the things that are happening in this amazing industry, we have today 3 incredible speakers, leaders of companies in 3 different verticals. As we have mentioned, they are Hector Prieto, CEO of Yerba Buena. That is a virtual reality video distribution platform, which is based in Silicon Valley and Madrid. Mm-hmm. Also, Javier Polo, CEO of Play Giga, a company that wants to extend the gaming as a service to the telco and the media portfolio. And also, Carlos Lopez, CEO of Oarsys Virtual Reality, that is a virtual reality and augmented reality accelerator with programs, if I am not wrong, in Madrid and in Valencia.
Only Madrid.
Only Madrid now? Okay. So, first of all, I want to ask you 3, which are the possibilities that you see in that technology and digital transformation can provide to the companies that work in these sectors? Which possibilities, which main new businesses that can provide tech? Mm-hmm. Who wants to start?
Maybe I can start with the question. It's very interesting to see, as we have a broad view in terms of how specifically VR and AR is impacting in all the different industries. What we see is that, for example, media and entertainment is driving all the kind of mass adoption, but slowly the B2B side is taking place, right? So in terms of what these technologies can enable, and I'm talking only for VR, AR, here we are talking about spatial computing, right? It's this new sense of interacting with digital information, not through screens, but through your own surroundings, with the full potential that has, as has been agreed by many experts. It's true that it's a long-term play, but I truly believe that in the next 10 years, there's going to be this change in paradigm in terms of how we exchange or we consume digital information through this new medium. There is many steps still to be taken to improve hardware and software. So answering to your question, I believe it's having a huge impact, starting with the massification through media, entertainment, games, and so on, and it's going to slowly take a place in the B2B side for industry and enterprise.
Yes, I think gaming is a very interesting case. The gaming industry is huge. It's over $100 billion. And when you see what's happened to music and movies, gaming hasn't gone through the sort of streaming transformation yet. It's happening now. So today, it's strange because if you're a gamer, you still have your PC or video console, you still buy your individual games. You need to store all of that. It's expensive. You need to download it. It's very strange when you look at what's happening in music or video. And of course, the reason why this is happening now in gaming is because the technology now is ready. So when you're streaming games as opposed to streaming music or movies, you interact with the content. So latency becomes a key parameter here. So when all of this is happening in the cloud and you're streaming to a low-end device, for instance, latency becomes a very critical parameter here. So now the technology is ready to do that, and what we're going to see is a huge transformation taking place in the video game industry towards streaming, just as it's happened with music and movies, and it's going to be huge.
Mm-hmm.
For me, what I really like and is a kind of amazing trend is what we call immersive broadcasting. It's attending sport events with virtual reality headsets and feeling that you are there at the best seat of the stadium. I think it's pretty amazing when you see with real quality and you say, okay, I could not go to Barça Madrid this time, but I feel there, or tennis or some other things. And as you mentioned, I mean, at the end, it's the business model what is important for these things to grow. And so far, we have seen the technology is ready again, and we have seen a number of projects more oriented into the wow effect. That's fantastic. From there to a real business generation is at the moment where we are. And I can put an example that is going to be very easy to see. Is those organizations who own the media rights, and a very concrete one is the Australian Open, who owns the rights, who produce already a broadcasting feed into the broadcasters. So how providing an additional feed, the immersive feed, is generating automatically a new business to Australian Open. So that's the business model that already works. And I think we are going to see very, very quickly this possibility as an additional one. I mean, we started with the TV, we saw that at the tablet, and will be very, very common for us to have this at home and to enjoy tennis, football, as if you were there.
You all have mentioned that we are in this kind of consolidation stage, and I want to make a question that was not prepared, but you all have mentioned this consolidation stage that we are right now. Are you so brave to put a date, a year, in which we are going to see this as a mainstream, both virtual reality and also as gaming, live streaming gaming as a massive mainstream trend?
I was talking just for VR generally. It's important to define what is mainstream. If we define mainstream as enough volume to create business, this has been just stated by Oculus, for example, that we need at least 10 million people in VR. And that's not headsets sold, and that's the big question. The big difference is headsets used daily, at least, let's say, half an hour, 50 minutes. Right now, there is many barriers. We are seeing from Oculus, for example, the launch of new products in the low price category. We can now buy, well, next year, we're going to be able to buy similar to the Oculus Go, Oculus Quest, which is 6 degrees of freedom for the ones familiar with the technical details. So we are going to see mainstream. If I need to put a year, let's say that, I would see that 10 million users, daily users, arriving maybe in around 4 years, which may seem a lot of time, but in fact, if you want to build a business, you need to build a strong foundation, and now is the moment, right? Everything takes time to develop, and being well positioned now will give you the competitive advantage to let's say, win that future.
In the gaming industry?
I think in gaming, things are happening just now. So in May, for instance, Electronic Arts, who I guess most of you guys know, is the FIFA developer and publisher, bought a cloud gaming company. And this is a huge step because now, if you're into gaming, and some of these guys are quoted too, so analysts will ask them, how are you going to respond to that? So if you're a publisher or developer, you just have two options really. One is to create the technology, which is difficult. The other one is to partner with someone who has it, which this is, by the way, pretty good for us. So once the publisher is pushing, everything will go pretty fast. Last Friday, Google announced a beta, service with a Chromecast of a streaming service of a Ubisoft game, and the next one who is coming is Microsoft. So this is happening now. The infrastructure is ready because the telecommunications infrastructure now is pretty good, right? The consumer is pretty much used to not possessing things, not owning things, but not possessing, but just buy things as a service. And now, everybody's going to be pushing for this to take place. Now, streaming of virtual reality, which is something, for instance, we do quite a bit of research in, will also be accelerated thanks to 5G and edge computing. And in fact, we are deploying some labs to investigate that. How can you stream virtual reality through 5G and edge computing together? So this is going to be, we believe, pretty fast.
So when you mentioned about mainstream, I was smiling because yesterday I was moderating a panel on eSports, and the question was, when is going to be mainstream? And the panelists were coming from the eSports industry, and the conclusion was, come on, Hector, what are you asking? This is already mainstream. And the measure that is in mainstream is if in 2023, I think was, Ronaldo is having less income than the eSports celebrity. So in the virtual reality, it's a little bit different. But I am brave enough to say that 2020 is going to be a year that this is going to be very natural, mainly because of the 5G deployment. And probably being the telcos, those who are pushing. And the story is that telcos are always, let's say, embracing technologies, and they are helping to that technology. If you remember when we don't have smartphones, the telcos were subsidizing that. So they don't stop the service until waiting for you, for the public to buy that. So with this is already only $200. So I guess as a part of the service, the telco will provide the headset as part of the service. And this is already, I live in the States, we are already discussing these kind of things. My bet is 2020 mainstream.
As a follow-up of your question, who do you think that is moving more fast in this area? Who is supporting more this kind of new trends and new ways of consuming entertainment and media? Is the user, the end user, or is the industry that is, as you have mentioned, the telcos or other companies that are pushing up with these kind of new technologies?
For me, I think there is going to be a shift in power, for saying it somehow, in terms of the telcos that are winning a lot of power because the consumption is going to depend on data, in comparison to, for example, the microprocessors companies, which is now kind of a monopoly with NVIDIA and different companies leading the way. We need to know that those companies that are making most of their money from B2C in selling mass kind of like for the computers for the mass market. And I believe there's going to be a shift in terms of how telcos are going to be pushing more for content, while those type of companies that are going to focus more on creating this infrastructure and these kind of like forms for processing all the data and for being able to stream it. So I see that there's going to be changes. It's going to be an interesting play. Definitely a good space to be in.
Yeah, I think in gaming, really, consumers wanted this for years, but again, the technology wasn't there. So now, once the latency barriers have been removed, what you see is that everybody's pushing, again, on the publisher side, and telcos, I think, will play a significant role here, which is very interesting because, of course, they're always chasing for opportunities to monetize their fiber in networks or 5G networks. The way I see it is, there is this huge, what we call interactive entertainment opportunity for them, and they're a great, distribution system. Now, when you look at Google getting into doing this and Microsoft, the problem with telcos is not that they might be missing this huge entertainment opportunity, interactive entertainment opportunity, is that they might get cannibalized their paid TV services because these guys, have billing systems, direct contact with the end consumer. They have the brands, they have the content, and they're going to be providing a mix of OTT content such as Netflix, HBO, whatever, and gaming content. So if you're a telco and you don't respond to that, and this might be already happening. People just using Netflix and HBO instead of whatever pay TV
traditional television
service the telco is providing to you. So we believe those, as Carlos was saying, will be pushing also gaming.
So from my side, definitely telcos are pushing a lot, and I think it's a very circumstantial situation because of coming the 5G. They need to fill that super new network with something really high bandwidth, low latency. But even more, a stronger need than that is the sport organizations. This is a fantastic fan engagement tool, and I am seeing the sport organization, the leagues, mainly in the States, being crazy because the fans are aging, and the new generations don't go to baseball, don't go to basket, don't go to American football. So they see on this kind of new immersive technologies a way for the kids and for the generations to go into that. So rather than the users, in the case of the virtual reality, I think it's going to be the industry, and even more than the telcos, I see the sport organizations pushing for being younger and with more technology.
Mm-hmm. We have talked about the business that we are creating in this area. We have talked about the formats or the technology support of all this, but which is the impact on the content itself that is going to provide all this kind of technology? Which new type of formats are we going to see? For example, in the sports segment that you are working really hard, which are the main, or can you give us a little example of what are we going to see in the next years?
Okay, we did a very interesting experience at the Open Mutua Madrid tennis here this year, and we created a kind of cinema within the venue. And it was just a kind of brand activation. It was just to see Nadal during 2 to 3 minutes in live, but it was surprising because part of the 2,500 people, one of them watched the entire match with this. It was a 2 or 3 hours match, and I was looking at that. So I don't know if the technology is ready for that now, but I think the creativity is working into smaller, shorter type of content, like the highlights or these kind of things. And for example, in this Mutua Madrid, every day you can see the matches of the previous day. So I think shorter format with more richness, or even with content that you typically cannot see, what's happening at the locker room, or what's happening at the party after the match. All these kind of things, I think, will happen. Of course, the match, but this kind of complementary
everything around
content.
it.
Yeah.
And in the gaming industry?
Yeah, the gaming, it's very interesting. So we, for instance, when we talk to publishers, they're thinking in different ways on how to leverage all of this technology and capabilities now. So, publishers are thinking, how can I create a better game using the new, cloud computing? The impact streaming has for them is huge. Just to give you an example, if you take, a new game, whatever, Fallout 76, and you analyze how many PCs out there can actually run the game, it's 50%. You, as a publisher, are investing, a lot of money into developing a game. So with streaming and cloud gaming, you can actually basically multiply that ×2 because the user requirements on a PC with streaming are very limited, as with Spotify and music. Or so this is highly strategic for them, together with the customer control. So some of the publishers have relied on distributors for selling their content, their games. Now they want to go direct. The same thing is happening with media. So you have all these big media companies that are going, from packaging the content B2B and reselling that through telcos to using streaming to get directly to the end consumer with their brands. So the whole industry is really moving towards that. And the telcos, what we see is that, of course, 5G has such low latency parameters that now, virtual reality is coming really, and the latency stress is huge. So here, if I turn and look at Hector, I know I'm going to see Hector, and Hector is there right away. If you have latency, yeah, otherwise I would be very scared. If you have a latency problem and you're playing a game that is creating a 360 degrees experience for you, and you have a small latency, you turn to look, and the image takes a while, maybe 5 milliseconds. That's enough for you to notice it. So of course 5G I think reduces fiber latency by a fact 1 order of magnitude or something like that. So that is really going to be pushing VR, definitely.
Mm-hmm. And I will point out just specific things, and it's very important, the convergence of technologies. That's why it's so difficult to predict when we are going to have mainstream. There is different pieces of the puzzle. The convergence of technology will make the miniaturization of the technology possible. Let's say lending towards sending data rather than on-device processing. So that's a key part of VR to really become mainstream, because devices are going to be kind of lighter, and in consequence, they're going to be more democratized with cheaper prices, and that's what the mass is going to be.
Yeah, it's about democratization. It's
Exactly.
totally that.
Access.
Yeah.
You both have agreed in other one thing in common, that is one of the barriers of these new trends in the media and entertainment industry, that is the telco infrastructure. You have mentioned all the 5G as the solution maybe for all these difficulties, technical difficulties that we are facing right now. So which are the other barriers that you find in the market? And also, talking a little bit about the 5G in more detail, which are the key points that you see that 5G or other telco infrastructures can help to develop and to consolidate this market?
Yeah. So I think that, 5G, and I was really surprised to see the US market really ahead of Europe here. And for instance, we're talking already to the big players there who are deploying networks. I think Verizon announced I think it was early August, they are going to deploy 5 cities with 5G technology this year. And so this is really going much faster than we anticipated. And the combination of that with edge computing is really going to remove a lot of the barriers. Now, on the publisher side, there are other elements to consider. One thing is that you create a new game and you stream it. The other thing is that you take an existing catalog game and you stream it. So that game is finished, and it wasn't designed to be streamed in the first place. So that team is already doing something else. So your technology requires, not to ask anything from the publisher for the content to be adapted, because that team is doing something else, is developing a new game. And when you do that, you don't want to open up the source code of the game to make that adaptation, because that's, as we all know, a huge bug creating process, and that's something you really want to avoid. So to the fact that these technologies exist, what we're going to be seeing is new games and monetization of back catalog pretty fast. So I think the back catalog element is also a relevant one from the technology point of view, when you talk about cloud gaming, of course. Yeah.
And I will mention for VR specifically, I think a big barrier is that there is multiple platforms, and similarly, there is still cost for porting from one platform to another. And that's an effort I think all the manufacturers are making now in terms of standardizing the development for each device to the point that just with one click, or with the goal that developers just with one click can port to one platform instead of another. It's huge, I believe. It's such a small thing, but I believe it's huge because it allows developers to start selling right away to a bigger audience. And in these moments in the market where still volumes are they are good, but not enough really to scale. So it's very important to have this standardization. So if everything goes according to the plan and best case scenario, definitely I see mainstream happening, but these little things need to converge. And cross-platform standardization, I think it's definitely key.
For me, the bottleneck is still a little bit the headsets. Now it's fantastic. There is no mobile phone here. They are on their own. They are lighter, and they have to improve. They have to have more resolution and so on. And the other bottleneck is the mass adoption. I mean, I rely on the telcos to help on that, but this mass adoption, what is our concern, and we think it will come very soon.
And finally, the devil question. Are the media and all the industry prepared for all this wave of innovation, really? And do you see any vertical or any kind of companies that are investing more? And moreover, how are they monitoring, or how are they valuing the return of investment that they are making? Do you have any opinion about that?
For me, maybe to differentiate two things, I think for the last probably 3 years since the VR really bloomed, we've seen a lot of innovation projects, right? So projects that were made for the top management to see, to explore new cases, and at the end they ended up in the innovation room, which is good for an initial phase. But I think it's exactly this year we start seeing more these projects being operationally deployed, and I'm talking broadly, not only media entertainment, but also enterprise. And I think that's key. Going from prototypes to working operational tools that allow enterprises to produce more. In terms of content, I see that the biggest barrier was audience, right? Like if you don't have an audience, how much money do you should put in is the typical media debate in terms of how much money do I have to spend in the media, knowing that the audience is small, but we need content in order to grow this audience. And I think this is working pretty nicely, but it's the balance that needs to be
For me, it's clear. It's from wow effect, from technology validation to business model is now. It's happening now. We are going into business model.
Yeah, what we see is the big guys moving in. And I mean, if you look at Google, for instance, they do have the infrastructure. They now have the content. They have a streaming channel. They have, I mean, they can stream onto YouTube. So that's a pretty big push. Microsoft as well, of course, they have the infrastructure for cloud. They have content, of course. They have also Mixer, which they can stream to. Now, Amazon, it's a different case, I think, because, of course, they have, they're huge. They can stream to Twitch. They don't have the content, and they were late to movies and music. So we'll see what they do in gaming.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much. I think we are out of time, so...
That's perfect, that's perfect.
So, thank you so much.
Conclusion, it's happening, and it's happening fast. Thank you so much, Alberto, Carlos, Javier, and Hector.